Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to journey deep into a cosmic catastrophe. It's a story you think you know, but hidden inside it is a blueprint for how all systems, literally all of them, fail. We're about to unlock this secret architecture of collapse, and it's all concealed within a single, powerful verse from the Zohar about the generation of the flood.
So, I want you to imagine this. Not some sudden Hollywood-style cataclysm, but a world that's slowly, almost imperceptibly, losing its light. It's like a cinematic fade to gray. You see, before the Great Flood just smashed onto the scene, the world didn't simply break. The Zohar teaches that it went through this slow, insidious process, a kind of spiritual entropy. A slow burn of corruption that started, and this is the key, not in the world we can see, but in a hidden dimension, deep within the source code of reality itself.
And here it is. This is our focal point. Genesis chapter 6, verse 11. Now, read it carefully, because everything is right here. Notice there are two distinct parts, two separate statements. First, the earth was corrupt before God. Pause. And then, the earth was filled with violence. This is not just some pretty poetic repetition. No, this is a sequence. It's a precise two-stage process for total systemic collapse. So let's really dive into this.
So that's our central mystery, right? Why the two steps and why in this specific order? What the Zohar reveals is just breathtaking. This isn't just some history lesson about a long-lost generation. This is a universal schematic. It's the diagnostic manual for how any system, I'm talking cosmic, societal, financial, and yes, even the incredibly complex system of your own personal life, begins to rot from the inside out and ultimately just breaks down.
Okay, so to unpack this incredible secret, here's our roadmap. We're going to journey through all these hidden layers. We'll start with that world on the brink, and then we'll explore that silent, unseen corruption. After that, we'll map out the anatomy of this cosmic crash, using the mystical machinery of the Sefirot. Then, we'll see how all that hidden chaos finally bursts into the open, which leads to the great system reset, the flood. And finally, and this is the most important part, we're going to discover how this ancient model is actually your personal blueprint for auditing your own life and for real growth. So let's get into our first stage and see how this all builds. This is the crucial initial phase, the corruption that was Lifnei ha-Elohim, before God. That little phrase is the whole key. You see, the corruption wasn't visible to human eyes yet. It was all happening in a dimension that was only perceptible to the divine. You know, what's so amazing about this slide is how it frames the problem in a language that we can all get our heads around today. That first stage, the before God part, that's a back-end crisis. It's like a corruption in the source code of reality. It's this deep spiritual misalignment, a tiny deviation from the divine blueprint that you can only see if you're running a divine-level audit. The front end, the world people were actually living in, it probably looked fine, normal even. But behind the curtain, a catastrophic failure was brewing.
For the adults in the room, let's think about this in terms of cosmic engineering. Imagine all of creation is just a massive, incredibly complex operating system. Stage 1, then, is a silent data breach, malicious code, which the Zohar calls sin, but you can just think of it as an act that misaligns reality, gets injected right into the system's kernel. The user interface, the physical world, it seems to be running just fine, but the divine system administrator sees the error logs just piling up and up. And the name used in the verse, Elohim, is so important. It refers to the divine attribute of strict justice, of din. This is the part of the system that runs diagnostics, that enforces the rules, that sees the code for exactly what it is. And Elohim sees that the core data structures are being corrupted, and that is fundamentally compromising the integrity of the whole system.
So here's the crucial question. How does a hidden, back-end bug end up crashing the entire universe? How does a spiritual flaw lead to a physical, world-ending flood? Well, for that, we have to look under the hood, at the very engine of reality, as described in Kabbalah, the 10 Sefirot, these divine emanations that structure all of existence. This is just brilliant. It shows the flow of failure right through the divine architecture. It's a cascade effect. It all kicks off at the highest levels of conception in the Sephira of Bina, which means understanding. Think of Bina as the cosmic control room, the system's highest diagnostic layer. It's the first to perceive the flaw, that spiritual misalignment. Okay, so that first error flag goes up and it triggers an intensification in the force of din, or strict judgment. Now, normally this would be balanced by its opposite force, chesed, or loving kindness. But the actions of humanity were only provoking judgment. So this raw, unbalanced energy then flows down to Yesod, the foundation. This is the very conduit that transmits the divine blueprint into our world. And the sins of that generation are said to have damaged this channel directly. So now Yesod is sending a distorted, corrupted signal downwards. And where does it land? In Malkut, our physical world, the kingdom. And that's it. The corrupted blueprint becomes physical reality, and the hidden rot erupts into open, undeniable chaos.
It is absolutely essential that we understand Din correctly. It is not evil. Din is the cosmic force of structure, of boundaries, of consequence. It is the universal law of cause and effect. Reality needs Din just to have form and order, right? The banks of a river are a form of Din that's needed to guide the water. But the problem in that generation was that their actions, their malicious code, they only activated this one force. There was no corresponding activation of chesed, of loving kindness and compassion. The system became radically imbalanced. It was a runaway feedback loop of severity, causing the very force that was meant to provide structure to instead overload and just shatter the entire system.
You know, we can even visualize this whole process through the language of color, which is a common theme in Kabbalah. So a world in a state of integrity, perfectly balanced with chesed, you can picture that as a brilliant, pristine white light. But as that hidden corruption begins, as Din starts to pile up before God, the cosmic color palette shifts. A subtle red tinge, the color of severity, starts to creep in at the edges. Then, as the system failure becomes imminent, right before the chaos is revealed, that red deepens into a dark crimson and ultimately plunges the world into the total darkness of collapse. And that sets the stage for the reset, the purification that aims to return the whole system to its original state of white balance, to a renewed potential for chesed.
And this whole process, this entire story of failure, is really a story about the fracturing of the perfect integrity of the 10 Sefirot. The number 10 in Judaism isn't random. It always represents a complete, perfected system. Think of the 10 Commandments, the 10 utterances of creation. The corruption of the world was a fundamental breakdown in this divine wholeness. It was a shattering of this perfect 10.
And that shattering, well, it brings us right to the second half of our verse. The back end is crashed, and now that failure cascades right to the front end for everyone to see. And the earth was filled with chamas. This is the blue screen of death for creation. The hidden corruption now erupts into a visible, undeniable, terrifying reality. You know, what's so fascinating here is the real definition of the Hebrew word Hamas. We often just translate it as violence, but it's so much deeper, so much worse than that. Hamas really means a total societal breakdown. It's robbery, but with an extra layer of cruelty just for the sake of it. It's institutionalized injustice. It's systemic lawlessness, where the very fabric of society just unravels and the powerful prey on the weak with zero consequences. It is the ugly, visible symptom of that hidden, before God, spiritual disease. For our younger viewers, here's another way to look at it. Think of a video game. Imagine the world has a big, visible health bar at the top of the screen, and for a long time, it looked like it was at a perfect 100%. Everything on screen seemed fine. But secretly, in the game's code, there was a hidden corruption meter, and it was filling up with every negative act. Well, once that meter maxed out, it triggered a catastrophic event in the game's engine. The world's defense stat just dropped to 0, and that health bar suddenly started to plummet. Chamas is what happens when that meter hits its limit. It's the visible glitches, the characters acting weirdly, the chaos and damage just appearing all over the screen for the player to see.
And this is it. This is the external reality of chamas. This is what the world actually looked like when that hidden cause, that spiritual misalignment, finally produced its inevitable awful effect. The rot that began before God was now plain for all to see. The system wasn't just corrupted anymore, it was in a state of total, cascading failure.
So what do you do? What do you do when a system is this broken? When the corruption is seeped this deep into the kernel? A simple patch isn't going to work. A software update isn't nearly enough. You need a hard reboot. You have to wipe the drive clean and reinstall the entire operating system. And this, according to the Zohar, is the deep, profound secret of the flood.
This is a huge mental shift we have to make. We have to reframe how we understand the flood. It wasn't just punitive, it was restorative. From the perspective of cosmic engineering, it was a necessary and maybe even a compassionate act. It was a forced reboot of a system that had become so irrevocably corrupted that it just couldn't function according to its design anymore. It was the only way to wipe the corrupted hard drive to allow for a clean reinstall of the cosmic OS.
And that number, 40, is no accident. In Kabbalah and really all of Jewish thought, 40 is the number of transformation, of gestation, of a complete change of state. It takes 40 weeks for a baby to gestate.
Moses was on the mountain for 40 days to receive the Torah. A ritual bath, a mikvah, has to have 40 seah of water to work its spiritual purification. The flood, therefore, was a cosmic mikvah. Those 40 days and nights of rain were a process of cleansing the world, of returning it to its primordial state of tohu vavohu, unformed and void, a blank slate of pure potential ready for a brand new beginning.
Okay, so we've been on this vast cosmic journey. But the Zohar always teaches that these huge cosmic principles are also intensely personal. The macrocosm is always reflected in the microcosm. So let's bring this enormous cosmic map right down to our own lives. Why does this ancient blueprint matter to you, sitting here, right now?
It matters because this two-stage process of collapse is happening inside of us constantly. Every single one of us has a before-God dimension. That's our inner world of thoughts, intentions, and hidden motivations, and that's where the silent corruptions begin. A negative thought pattern that you just let run on a loop. A small ethical compromise you tell yourself, it doesn't matter. A hidden resentment you're holding onto against someone. A silent bad habit you just keep letting slide. These are the back-end errors, and if they are left unaddressed, they will, inevitably, manifest as chamas in your life, as chaos and breakdown in your external reality. That negative thought pattern, it becomes an explosive emotional outburst. That small compromise, it leads to a major professional failure. That hidden resentment festers and results in a broken relationship. And that silent bad habit, it can culminate in a health crisis.
And this slide just brilliantly illustrates the practical takeaway, the call to action. The lesson from the Zohar is a profound call to radical self-awareness. We have to become the system administrators of our own lives. We have to be willing to run the diagnostics, to audit those hidden layers of our own consciousness. We need the courage to identify those negative thought patterns, those tiny compromises, those silent data breaches in our personal integrity. The whole goal is to fix the bugs in your personal code before they manifest, before they're forced to crash your external reality.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, this is the thought I want to leave you with. This is the diagnostic question to ask yourself honestly. What is the silent before God corruption that you need to address in your own system? What unseen imbalance, what unaddressed inner flaw is slowly accumulating the energy of din, of judgment and consequence in your personal life right now? The power of this blueprint is that it gives all of us the chance to intervene before the flood.
Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.